everybody, and here we meet once again. All of this meeting is only going to get more frequent as and when the date comes closer. And I know with each day passing, the time is of the most crucial value, and which is why, without any further ado, let us straight jump on to the passages that we have for today. Now, the genres that we're going to be picking up today are going to be history and ethics and morality, the kind of things that we are always in doldrums and dilemma about. So let's try and take the passages and understand, can we really get any clarity through history and ethics and morality, or are we still going to keep oscillating between what is right and what is wrong, but with the help of the passages today? Let's get on to the first passage. First things first, we're going to start by reading the passage and thereby going on to the question, seeing which of the following is going to be the right answer and which of it would not. Let's begin. Why is the association between Nazism and the occult so fascinating and so enduring? So the author begins with, this interrogation. Why is it so fascinating? Claims about Hitler's supposed connections to occultism circulated before he even came to power. And all of these claims about, Hitler's supposed connection to occultism. Occult is going to be all of those practices which are not really societally accepted. So, there have always been this unsaid connection that Hitler has had to occult practices. The image comes in several forms. So there have been a lot of instances, replete instances, which tell us why. So let's take those. Nazism as a tool of dark forces, or Nazis as covert masters of the occult. So there have been a lot of forms wherein they feel that, okay, Nazism is nothing but a tool of dark forces. All things, which are evil in nature. Likewise, Nazis are nothing but covert. Covert is hidden. They are masters of the occult. The appeal of these ideas stems from the nature that occultism itself. Now, the author goes about by saying that all of this, has been able to be tied up together. That is because of the kind of meaning occult has itself. So let's see. Esoteric philosophers. Esoteric are not very known ones. So esoteric philosophies promise access to a deeper reality, a higher truth lying beyond the veil of the ordinary world. So there have been a lot of philosophies that tell us a lot about, so just not what is visible to the naked eye, but there is a lot that underlies it as well. Since ordinary explanation seems so inadequate for the abominations of the Nazi era, the esoteric alternative is enticing. And since we don't really have any answer as to why were they so mean, why did they have so many abominations? Why were they so cruel on people? Which is why the only way we can give justification to this is by looking into the occult definition. It also fits the rhetoric of Nazism itself, suggestive and seductive rather than plain spoken and straightforward, filled with grandiose dreams and nebulous promises in an ineffable, something that transcends everyday reality. And in fact, this is exactly what Nazism was all about. It was not a very straightforward approach altogether. It was suggestive, it was seductive, and it was this grandiose dream. Grandiose is huge, big. So it was these, very splendid dreams that they had, the kind of promises that are ineffable, which means something that can't be described in words at all. Something that transcends, and something that transcends normal day, normal reality day, normal understanding of a person. That's how Nazism was all about. That is where the danger lies, and that was the most dangerous part. To blame Nazism on otherworldly forces is to exonerate the prosaic causes that brought Hitler to power in the first place. So then the author just goes about by saying that if you keep blaming Nazism, saying that it's otherworldly, it's come from some other world altogether, you're going to basically exonerate. Exonerate means to free someone. Prosaic means dull. So you're going to free them from these, causes that brought Hitler to power in the first place. So this means that we are going to shift the blame altogether. Yet such beliefs persist because they face scarce competition. Solid scholarship on the relation between Nazi regime and occult currents is rare. But this has been the kind of research field which has taken up a lot of momentum. Why? Because less people do it, and the amount of the scholarship that you get, of course, is a lot. All in all, it's something which is very rare. Not entirely absent, however, historians have often shied away from the apparent disreputable subject of occultism, but there are several incisive assessments of its status in Nazi Germany. And historians have not been very keen on it also. They're shying away from it because it's not a very acceptable topic. But there have been a few who have done it. Though usually overshadowed by sensationalist treatment, serious work on the topic continue to occur. So they're of course overshadowed by some very controversial work which must have happened somewhere, but there are some who are doing very serious work as well. There is much to debate about the arguments raised in these books, but they do offer a critical examination of the neglected part of history. So there's a lot to debate, but then there is some very critical evaluation also that they do tend to give us. And that history looks very different from the myths that have grown up around it. And if you actually evaluate the myths around it, you're going to see that history was very different. Consider three chief elements in the long-standing popular image of Nazi occultism: the Thule Society, the Ahnenerbe or Ancestral Heritage Office of the SS, and the Wewelsburg Castle. So there are these three chief elements in the Nazi, in the Nazi dictionary. Now those are the long-standing popular images that we resonate whenever it comes to the Nazi occultism, namely the three that we have. A common perception cast each of these seemingly uncanny phenomena so suited to the mysterious countenance of the Third Reich as an integral bond between Nazi rule and the enigmatic world of occultism. So all of these have been evidence enough to be able to know that there is some connection between the two. Each of them did in fact have some connection to the occult, but these links were more mundane and paradoxically more revealing than the myths would have made us believe. And all of these had some sort of connection with the occult, of course, but then they were so mundane, they were so ordinary that one did not really pay attention to. The short-lived Thule Society, which gained brief notoriety in the aftermath of the First World War, is frequently portrayed as a paradigmatic example of the secret societies that supposedly gave birth to the Nazi party. So let's begin with, of course, the Thule Society. It was very short-lived, but then it was probably, the bread and butter. It was the breeding ground wherein the secret societies came to be. While the organization was indeed secretive and its modest membership did include several figures who went on to become leading Nazis, it was not an occult order. But then there were a lot of members who went and, later in time did become Nazi leaders, but they were not primarily occult. The founder of the group, who went by the invented aristocratic name of Rudolf von, he was in fact the son of a train driver, had extensive occultist interest, but they seem to have been met with indifference from the rest of the members. Now, it was the leader. I mean, he was the founder of this group. Now, he was the one who had a lot of occult, inclination. But then, of course, there was resistance from the other group members as well. This is not surprising, since the Thule Society was in reality a political organization committed to right-wing radicalism, not esoteric mechanization. And this is not going to be very strange for us, because they were more into right-wing radicalism and not so much into esoteric mechanizations. Aside from spreading anti-Semitic propaganda, so anti-Semitic is of course anti-Jews, its chief activities consisted of militant confrontation with the left in the Munich area. Hitler had nothing to do with the group, so they were obviously they were also politically active, but Hitler didn't really have a lot to do. The notion of the Thule Society as incubator of the Nazi party is a product of Sebottendorf's megalomaniacal imagination. Years after the organization dissolved, he published a spurious is something which is very fake, memoir claiming that he played a crucial role in nurturing the early Nazi movement. Now, of course, there's this guy, he was a megalomaniac, somebody whose ego just cannot be satisfied, and he wanted some attention, which is why he wrote a spurious article around it saying that he's the one who played a crucial role. There has never been any evidence of such claim, but of course there's been no evidence that we have. What of Heinrich Himmler's? This was an SS department devoted to researching the alleged Aryan origins of the German people. Thanks to Himmler's personal fascination with the occult, some of the projects pursued under the aegis of the Ahnenerbe had esoteric affiliations, but most did not. So we've been able to find that, okay, couple of them did have a lot of occult inclinations, but then most of them did not, or there was some sort of retaliation. So this is what the passage has been about. The first is on history, so we understand what the history of the Nazi origin had been. Which of the following is not one of the main ideas of the passage? So three of these are a main idea, one of it is not a main idea. We have to find the one which is not. Let's see. Rigorous academic work has already established a direct causal pipeline. Now, I think here is where we know has already established throughout the passage. It just goes on and on saying that we don't have credible information to rely upon it. So to say that it has already established a direct causal pipeline from mystical fraternities to the governing machinery, mystical fraternities, of course, are the occult, because they're mysterious till now. There has been no establishment whatsoever. So this is definitely an answer for us. So let's keep this and let's then see the other ones obviously will have to be true. Popular appetite for mystical backstories endures because such narratives feel more satisfying than ordinary explanations and have faced too little sustained rebuttal from serious research because not a lot of them do it. And of course, it is enticing, is how the author says. So, this is definitely true. If it is true, it can't be my answer. Where references to mystic themes did not appear around the regime, they were mostly routine, tactical, and later overstated rather than foundational of how the regime operated. Of course, this is also true as per the passage, can't be my answer. Explaining the regime through supernatural agency, which is the occult, risks deflecting blame from the very human actors and institutions that enabled it. Yes, because the author goes about by saying that, he finds this a little suspicious. So why suddenly get this occult idea? Maybe because you are not able to give justification to how cruel a person could be that you actually say that he's an evil incarnate. So that's something that's been bothering the author here. So this is obviously true, which cannot be my answer, which leaves my answer to be option A, the one thing which is false as per the passage. What, according to the author, is the main problem with associating narcissism to occultism? Okay, let's see. It mistakes marginal curiosities for the regime's operative doctrine, thereby inflating peripheral symbolism into central policy. Now, this one goes about by saying that it mistakes marginal curiosities. Okay, there were only few people who were curious, but this was back then when they were doing. Maybe in today's times, people have actually gotten curious. So, do we know now? Maybe that's going to be a little, that can be debated around. So, let's reserve this in case we don't find anything good. We'll come and ponder over it again. It leans on the field with limited rigorous study, so the claim lacks sufficient scholarly ballast. Okay, we understand that there isn't enough thrust to this, but then the requirement of the question is what is the main problem? So just because we have less of academic research to it, which is why he's not wanting to do it, well, if you read the passage, that is not what the reason is. He just goes about by doing that because throughout the passage we understand that the author is more pissed about the fact that people have very conveniently added the occult idea to it. It's actually the human who's mean, right? And what he does not understand is that how can somebody be so evil? Now, that is why he's not able to do it. So, all of these could just be distractions. This is definitely not an answer. It exaggerates the influence of select personalities and officers, especially Hilmer and Ananabi, beyond the record, what records can sustain. Okay, there's no exaggeration. That's not why he's not doing it. It relocates agency to supernatural causes and in doing so obscures and excuses the human and institutional forces that enabled the regime, right? So it becomes very easy to deviate and say that, okay, no, these people could be good, but it's because, they had these occult influences, which is why they were not themselves and which is why they did what they did. So it's very easy for them to detract from the actual human evils that they were. So definitely between A and D, I know that I have a better answer, so I can eliminate A now, and that my answer becomes D. Just what I wanted. Which of the following statements would most effectively undermine the author's assertion? So we have to undermine it. So all the things that the author's gone about by saying we have to weaken it. So we say the opposite of it. Let's go. Independently authenticated archive document Hitler's regular attendance at formal occult rites with meeting minutes linking those rites to subsequent cabinet discussions and decrees. Throughout the passage, we didn't have enough intel. We did not have enough evidence to say that. We simply find evidence, which means we don't have clarity in the passage whether occult and Hitler go hand in glove, but now we make it sure. So this is definitely weakening. This is likely to be an answer, but we'll read the other ones also. A comprehensive audit of Ananarbi's account shows that most expenditures supported ethnographic surveys and laboratory work without ceremonial content. If it is without that, that means there has been no occult influence. Can't be my answer. A longitudinal study of post-war cinema and publishing demonstrates that popular culture magnified occult motives far beyond what contemporaneous government. Now, this is not talking about the contemporary government, it's talking about something else out of scope. We want to talk about the Hitler regime, the Nazi regime, which was contemporary at that time. Newly collated Thule Society roosters corroborated by police files exclude Hitler and depict the... Okay, now again, we don't want to exclude. If you exclude Hitler, then the entire idea goes off. We want to talk about Hitler and Nazi all throughout, so which means the correct answer will have to be option A over here. Which of the following is being implied? Implied means from the said about the unsaid. So what is the one thing that we can understand as the unsaid? The stickiness of occult narratives about narcissism is driven chiefly by audience psychology, not by the behavior of historians. Yes, it's what people are wanting to believe, but there's no evidence around it. Definitely an answer. The hesitation of academic historians to work on the topic left a gap that popular. Okay, now there's no hesitation, there was, but currently we understand that people have, been keen about it. So this can be once archives are more fully mined, occult explanations for narcissism will be eliminated. No, we didn't talk about when they're going to be. Throughout the passage was about how we still don't have enough data around it. Sensational media fabricated the Nazi occult linkage from the whole cloth with no historical residue whatsoever again. An inference will always be from the said about the unsaid. There has to be said stuff. So there was no such said stuff, which means the correct answer is going to be option A for us. And with that, let's bounce on to the next passage. The next passage is on morality. Let's go. Imagine a world in which artificial intelligence is entrusted with the highest moral responsibility, sentencing criminals, allocating medical resources, and even mediating conflicts between nations. So imagine a time wherein, the highest of the moral responsibilities are given to AI. This might seem like a pinnacle of human progress. It might seem like, human progress at its zenith. An entity unburdened by emotion, prejudice, and inconsistency, making ethical decisions with impeccable precision. So an entity which is AI. AI is, of course, it's going to never be, justified or it's, unjustified. It's never going to be biased. So an entity like that doing any of this, of course, what better? This is impeccable. This is this can never be erroneous. Unlike human judges or policymakers, a machine would not be swayed by personal interest or lapse in reasoning. It does not lie. It does not accept bribes or plea. It does not weep over hard decisions. So we understand all of the human factors that probably sway a decision will be absent. So obviously the way we respond to it is going to be more clear. Yet, beneath this vision of an idealized moral arbitrator lies a fundamental question. Can a machine understand morality as humans do? And is it confined to a simulacrum of ethical reasoning? Now over here, but then there is an underlying question, and that is, can it really understand ethics? And the fact that if it can understand ethics, if it cannot understand ethics and morality, will it ever be able to do what a human is possibly able to do? So, or is it just confined to the simulacrum of ethical reasoning? Is it just that it's bound by the rules, but it can't really think like that? AI must replicate human decisions without improving on them, carrying forward the same biases, blind spots, and cultural distortions from human moral judgment. To which the author says that AI, of course, might replicate human decisions without improving on them, but then goes about carrying forward all of these and might not even distort the human judgment. In trying to emulate us, that is to copy us, it might only reproduce our limitation, not transcend them. But if AI is there, it should help you. It needs to do what you can't do. But if it's only limited to what you can do, how is AI being helpful to you? But there is a deeper concern. The author is like, this is not it, there's more. Moral judgment draws on intuition, historical awareness, and context, qualities that resist formalization. If you are ever looking for a morality-based judgment, there are so many other things that help you come to that judgment. It is just not about, how it is formalized. Ethics may be so embedded in lived experience that any attempt to encode it into formal structures risk flattening its most essential features. And ethics can also be embedded in such a way that if you actually bypass it, you might not do justice to the scenario. If so, AI would not merely reflect human shortcomings, it would strip morality to the very depth that makes ethical reflection possible in the first place. And if such is the thing, AI is not really your friend, my dear. That is what it says. Still, many have tried to formalize ethics by creating certain moral claims, not as conclusions, but as starting points. But then many have still tried to justify it by saying, no, it's a start. It's not the end. A classic example comes from utilitarianism, which often takes as a foundation axiom of the principle that one should act to maximize overall well-being. Now, classic example has been taken from the philosophy of utilitarianism, that is, we must act to maximize overall well-being. From this, more specific principles can be derived. For example, that it is right to benefit the greatest number, or that actions should be judged by their consequences for total happiness. And from this, we have gotten a lot of other adaptations as well. As computational resources increase, AI becomes increasingly well suited to the task of starting from fixed ethical assumptions and reasoning through their implications in complex situations. So we can probably feed them all of this, and that is where they can start to evaluate on complex situations. But what exactly does it mean to formalize something like ethics? But then the author still is not very satisfied with all of this. He says, what happens if you formalize ethics? The question is easier to grasp by looking at the field in which formal systems have long played a central role. And in fact, more so, we will get more clarity if we try to understand what they do whenever there is a more formal role to them, a more central role. Physics, for instance, has relied on formalization for centuries. There is no single physical theory that explains everything. Instead, we have many physical theories, each designed to describe specific aspects of the universe, from the behavior of the quarks and electrons to the motion of the galaxies. Now, these theories often diverge. Aristotelian physics, for instance, explained falling objects in terms of natural motion towards Earth's center. Newtonian mechanics replaced this with the universal force of gravity. These explanations are not just different, they are incompatible. So if you see, there are loggerheads. They don't sync in with one another. Yet both share the same common structure. They begin with a basic postulate, assumptions about motion, forces, and mass, and derive increasingly complex consequences. But if you see, their base assumption is the same. It's from there that they have both had divergent theories for themselves. Isaac Newton's law of motion and James Clerk's equation are classic examples, compact, elegant formulations from which wide-ranging predictions about the physical world can be deduced. And if you take these, you would know how even from one basic there can be two projections that can come. Ethical theories, so all of this was given an example to support that ethical theories can also be sort of, they can also have a base of a common basis from which multiple philosophies can emerge. Like physical theories, they attempt to describe a domain, in this case, the moral landscape. They aim to answer questions about which action are right or wrong and why. These theories also diverge, and when they are recommending similar options, such as giving to charity, they justify them in different ways. So then comes the multiplicity of it. Ethical theories also often begin with a small set of foundational principles or claims from which they reason about more complex moral problems. A consequentialist begins with the idea that actions should maximize well-being. A deontologist starts from the idea that actions must respect duties and rights. These basic commitments function similarly to their counterparts in physics. They define the structure of the moral reasoning within each ethical theory. So they give us the baseline, and from here, what AI can do is AI can expand, AI can transform, it can probably transcend into multiple ideas. So basically, it's trying to give a slight bit of scope that AI could really help in ethical decision making. Let's see, which of the following assumption has been made by the author in the passage? So author ने क्या सोच के pen उठाया? Right? Assumption is the information that he's taken for granted. So he said all of this. What has he taken for granted? So obviously it will have to be that AI should have some iota of, some iota of efficiency in being able to do some ethical judgment. So that's what we want, or something like that. Let's see. In value disputes across communities, a computational adjudicator ought to align outcomes. Okay, now this is ought, this is extreme. We don't keep anything which is extreme. Explicit can't be my answer. By drawing an analogy with the natural science, the author presumes that moral controversies can be settled. No, he's not. He's just giving us a way out. He's not presuming. A computing system can carry out codified decision protocols with exact, unfailing adherence to their stated rule, even in intricate cases. Yes, it can always give you multiple scenarios. It is upon you to decide what is it that you want to do. Definitely. A verdict cannot qualify as moral unless sentiments and okay, we didn't talk about sentiment and empathy at all. We have C, something that we just wanted as the answer, and there it was. Which of the following best states the author's purpose in the passage? Why is the author written this passage? He wants to tell us about the capabilities of AI. Let's go. To advocate installing AI as a lead arbitrator in the courts and hospitals. Okay, let's just bunk this option here. It's not worthy to read. To establish that moral theory is equivalent to natural science in structure, and therefore no, it's not equivalent. He's not establishing, he's just taking an example for us to know. He's preaching lead by example wala haal hai. To evaluate the prospect and limits of coding moral reasoning by AI by contrasting ethical framework with scientific modeling, and to caution the rule-based systems can omit indispensable human context. Perfect. This is what he's like, by thread with caution. That's it. To recommend an outcome maximizing ethic is the sole coherent. Okay, I can just eliminate it right here. The correct answer by default becomes option C. Which of the following courses of action would the author most likely agree with? So which of the following do you think is he going to agree? Mandate a single outcome maximizing code base for all decision, single base? No. That's never what he said. He's like, let the AI give you propositions. You can then decide what you want. Use algorithmic rule sets for structured analysis, but require a standing, culturally diverse human panel to review, contextualize, and where needed, override systems recommendation. So it will give you all your homework, your fieldwork. Then, of course, the human element has to come in and figure out what needs to be done. Definitely. Allow the system to issue binding outcomes whenever a case matches predefined templates. Convene human viewers only for Okay, no. The humans over AI, not AI over human. Suspend all AI from, okay, you can just let it be here. This cannot be an answer because he never talks about it. He's like, use them, but be mindful as to how you want to and limit their usage. All of the following paradoxes are implied in the passage except. So which of the following is not a paradox? The more meticulously human emotions are translated into algorithm, the less recognizable those emotions become in the machine responses. Of course, this is a fact. This is not a paradox. It's not a contradiction or a confusion. Definitely an answer for me. Because the more you feed the computer, the more the computer will know. An entity designed to avoid biases may nevertheless perpetuate prejudice embedded on its input data. Obviously, what you feed is what AI will do. If you feed it with biased data, it will becomes a paradox. Definitely can't be my answer. The more completely ethical principles are formalized, the more they risk appearing detached from the very qualities that give moral reasoning depth. Yes, the more you begin to formalize, it's like ye hoga to yehi hoga, but then what about the other ones? What about the exceptions? Definitely a paradox. A system may deliver outcomes with impeccable internal consistency while lacking any genuine comprehension of what makes those outcomes morally significant. Definitely a paradox. So I think we have the answer here. The answer is going to be option A for us. And with that, we come to an end to two amazing passages. I hope you had fun because the passages were clearly very interesting. And I hope you've been able to understand all of the answers with elimination, why an answer and why not. Please make sure that you go on reading because ethics, morality, history can be very subjective. And the more you read, the better you get. Thank you so much for giving me your valuable time. I'm going to see you guys very soon once again with another such genre-based Aeon passage. Until then, please keep practicing because if you're not practicing, time's not stopping for us, guys. Thank you once again.